What's up, you lazy, entitled, basement-dwelling millennials, bootstrapping boomers, apathetic Xers, and goddamn Gen Z kids today? We have a very interesting guest. He is probably our first registered Republican, I think, that has been willing to come on the podcast. We really appreciate him. We're going to get some great conversation. His name is John Paul Moran. And we'll let you introduce yourself. I don't want to speak out of turn on telling people who you are, so please introduce yourself. Tell us about where you came from, where you're going, your past careers. You ran for office at one point. Just fill us in on who you are.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for having me. I'm a Republican, but I'm an American first. Um, probably a Christian first, actually, Catholic, but somewhere up there, American Catholic. And common sensor. I'm an 85 common sensor, is what I call it too. I'm with the 85% of common sense Americans. We're a united country, I believe. So I live in Massachusetts. I used to be an MIT optical space engineer when I got out of college, and I can thread into the MIT thing because there's some MIT people involved in creation of this project we put together at my nonprofit called Grand Opportunity USA, otherwise known as Go USA. We have another nonprofit called Go United, which are 501c3. And Go USA is a 501c4. Those are just technical terms for nonprofits in America. Originally a Jersey guy, so I talk fast, walk fast, and love great pizza and Italian subs. Um, I'm currently working as I'm a marketing professional, chief marketing officer of some tech companies. I have a very strong tech and marketing background. I had my digital agency for years, and that all comes to this. That all comes together when I talk about my story, marketing and technology. And I wrote a book in 2016, a political book, and then I ran for Congress in 2020 because I was tired of the crap. I'm actually also a seventh generation nephew of Thomas Jefferson. Very happy about that because I love Thomas Jefferson. He's my favorite president, and I believe the Declaration of Independence. You guys probably know that. If your audience doesn't know that, it's a very important document that founded America. And so my background's kind of complex. I used to own a surfing company in California, so I have very varied background. I'm single. I'm gay, but I'm not LGBTQ plus. I believe in the LGB, and I believe in the rest separate. I'm not against it, but they're very different things. Gay rights and the radical transgender movement is very two different issues. So I like to separate those. But anyway, the point is, I ran for Congress in 2020 because I guess I'm a populist. I believe in common sense, and I said, why are we having all these problems with our political world? There's a lot of corruption. We know so much from Doge, all the money that hundreds of billions of dollars going wherever out of our taxpayer money. And
Okay, I'm sorry.
What's the problem
You
with
have
that?
zero evidence of that. I mean, they've provided no evidence that they've found hundreds of billions of dollars going
Well,
wherever, and they've fallen way short of any of the claims that they've made. So
okay. Well,
continue.
there's a
I
website
just
that details it. There's a website that details it. So if people want to look at the website, they can go to the website and they can argue with the website. I see the website and I understanding it's backed by the government. So that's the point is whether you believe in Doge or not. Everybody knows there's government fraud and waste. Over 85% from our evidence in the OppScore shows that the vast majority believe there's a lot of waste in government. So wherever you are in the spectrum, I think that's a very populist position. So I ran for Congress in 2020 because the point is very simply that we're not getting what we should be getting from our politicians. The majority of Americans agree that there's corruption, there's fraud. And we're just in self-serving politicians doing what they want and not what we want. I think the left and the right both agree that there's a lot of in fact, there's data proving this. I'm a data guy. Data proving that when people go into office, they're not working for the voters, they're working for their donors. And corporations and lobbyists and Google and left or right, they're working for the people paying, basically helping to get elected through major donations. And in Europe, you can't do that. In Europe, they can't have that kind of stuff going on. So all that put together, I ran for Congress and I said, let's as a Republican in the bluest state in the bluest state in the country, Massachusetts, knowing it's be an uphill battle, 2020 in the middle of COVID. And what was very interesting and startling to me was I went and talked to thousands of people during COVID, in the middle of COVID in 2020, and uh, and my opponent Seth Moulton saw nobody because it was COVID and he was basically playing the hiding game, wouldn't debate me, and everybody agreed with me. I talked to people, I kept the numbers, and over 85% of the public I met in Massachusetts agreed with me on the issues. I took the numbers on it, and I would say who agrees with this issue, that issue, this issue, that issue. I would talk with people, and the vast majority of people agree with me on the issues. So why did I lose my race? Because they said I don't like high taxes. I don't like, I like more common sense border control. I do believe in voter ID. These kind of common sense things. And I said, well, then, then why is it that you lose a race? Why is it only about money? Because he was just shooing. No matter what you do in Massachusetts, if you're a Republican, you lose. If you're in the reddest state in the country, you're going to lose if you're a Democrat. So, like, why is it that there's barriers when you have evidence showing on the issues? If I was a car, I would have been sold off the lot because I had all the bells and whistles people wanted. If I was a movie, I would have gotten high Rotten Tomatoes ratings based upon the issues. So why did I lose? And that's what was the inspiration of creating the opportunity score or the OppScore, which simply measures where people stand on the issues vis-a-vis with the will of the people and the Constitution. So we created a system that says, forget about red and blue, forget about Republican and Democrat, forget about left versus right. On the issue of free speech, you support it or you against it. You force free speech or you are you against free speech? And then we see where the politicians lands. Have they voted against it? Or they voted
And
for it? Have they made statements saying that we've got to restrict free speech? Have they said statements that said we got to support free speech?
I,
You go down to abortion. You look at education. You look at school choice. You look at gay rights, of course, which I'm a big proponent of. You look at these issues and say, where do people stand on the issues, and what does the Constitution say? Because the way we see it is America is built in the reason why America is successful is there's guardrails. It's not a democracy or a republic.
okay. Again. Do you know what
So
a
that's where,
republic
that's
is?
where we have a guardrail the republic. We're a democratic
Do you
republic.
know what a republic is? Like, because you make these
Yeah.
statements, and I hear this statement all the time. And do you know
Sure.
what a republic is? Like, can you define a republic?
A republic is a country. It's a constitutional republic based upon the idea that we are not a. First of all, democracy. Our founding fathers were just as feared a democracy, a pure democracy, as they did.
Okay, so there you go. You go and you say we're not a
See,
democracy, and then you correct yourself and say we're not a pure democracy. A republic is a form of democracy. It is representative democracy. We are a democracy. So, like, I absolutely hate that because once again, you're trying to frame something in a way that makes it sound like republic and tack that to Republican, and we're not a democracy. Tack that to Democrat.
so
Like,
we're not.
it's a patently false statement. Like,
It's not a false statement. So a pure democracy is not a republic. A republic
I understand that.
yeah, yeah. What
All
I'm saying is
all
pure.
republics are democracies, but not all democracies are republics. But a
Correct.
republic is still a democracy. It's like a square and a rectangle, right? Like all
Well,
squares are.
a republic. Let me finish. So a republic. The idea of being a republic is we have guardrails called the Constitution, and that's this. The system of our OppScore system is a pure democracy. Is if, for example, for rights, a pure democracy. If there wasn't a republic and we said the Constitution needs to be burned and we just have to have pure republic, the pure democracy, then 51% always rules, and obviously that's dangerous because then the minority is always screwed. So that's why you have, that's just an example of why the guardrails of the OppScore system, the opportunity score we invented, are the first is the Constitution rules. So if 51% say I don't like free speech, we don't care. The First Amendment is the rules. That's the guardrails. That rules. Now, most issues that we deal with every day, like school choice, are not constitutional issues. So, as long as constitutional, the will of the people rule. That's how we invented the rating system. And I don't think anybody reasonably could say that's a bad way to rate politicians. If your job is you swear on the Constitution, you agree with that? They swear on it, so they should support it.
Okay,
Both
and can we get because we're gonna do a whole section about your opportunity score. So
okay.
I had a couple of questions about you kind of before we got in there, just you know in order, so we don't have to backtrack here.
Yeah,
You covered. We were gonna talk a little bit about some of the things that you stand on, but you did a good job covering those.
good.
Uh, and you said you're openly gay, which
Mhm.
I when we were looking you up, you're not the only openly gay Paul Ryan in Massachusetts that ran for Congress, which is wild
John
to
Moran.
me.
John Moore.
Or John Moran, sorry. that ran for Congress, which is just crazy to me. We when we were doing our research on you, Googled him, and it's like I thought he was a Republican, and this other guy's a Democrat. Are you
Well,
aware of him?
he runs for state office, not federal.
Okay, but yeah, it was just the first thing. We Googled your name and Congress or whatever, Massachusetts, and this
Yeah,
other guy
there's a
comes up, and
Democrat
it's
named
like
exactly.
it was wild. But anyway, I read an interview um when you were running for office, and you were quoted saying, "Hatred on the far left of anybody that does." Hatred on the far left of anybody that does not agree with their ideology is extreme, and I'm on the front lines of taking fire from them all the time. You also
Hmm.
said, also have disagreements with people on the right of my party who do not want to support gay rights. And
Yeah,
I find this insanely disingenuous because like it's hatred on the far left because somebody doesn't like you, or maybe they do hate you because of a political affiliation you choose.
yeah.
I'll concede that. But it's just simple little disagreements from people on the right who actively hate who you are as a person, who want to strip you of your rights to get married, strip you of your rights to have children, to speak about your family in front of children. Like if you wanted to say that you and your husband went on vacation over summer break, if you were in a school, they want to take that right away from you because that's apparently not okay in their eyes. Um, and so they genuinely hate you. Think you're going to burn in hell. At least a lot of them burn in
Mm.
hell for all of eternity because of who you are. And you frame that as disagreements on that side and hatred on the left. And
Can I
I like,
respond to that?
huh?
I can respond to that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
I was I had legitimate, verified threats, death threats from the left, death threats to murder and kill me. I didn't have any death threats from people on the Bible thumping right. I had disagreements, and there's some people that can't stand me, and I can't stand them because they're anti-gay. But you know what? None of them threatened to murder me. Okay,
Okay.
I was in.
But they have people
I
on the
was in,
right have literally murdered people for being gay. I mean,
they
there was a whole. Okay, go
threatened
ahead.
to
Sorry.
shoot me. Okay, I would say threatening to murder somebody is more extreme, and I would consider that more hateful than saying that I disagree with him. He's going to go to hell, and I disagree with. Believe me, I got chased for being gay. I got threatened for being gay. And I was in that fight for since the '90s. So I know what hatred is, and I see it on both
So,
sides. But I
what
would just say,
is
yeah, that was you picked that one article. There is hatred on the right.
Yeah.
I'm not saying there's no hatred on the right,
so,
but I got my effect. I've never had anybody. I was in the HRC, you know, what Human Rights Campaign. It's a division of the Democratic
Yeah,
Party.
I'm
I
familiar with
was
human
in
rights.
Provincetown that I vacationed every summer for 20 years, and I went into a store when I was running for Congress, and I saw shirts for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris in 2020. And I asked them, I just did very simple. I said, I see all these shirts and all this propaganda for Democrat Party. I thought the Human Rights Campaign was a nonpartisan pro-gay rights organization. I said, if you're going to be for gay rights, where is the church for Trump? Where's the church for John Paul Moran for Congress? As soon as they heard that, they came out. The guy came out sweating. The manager, bald guy, came out and said, "You need to be shot dead in my store right now. If you support Trump, you need to be shot dead." He was threatening to kill me. The HRC store. Okay, I never had anybody on the right
All right.
all over ever say that you need to be shot dead. And this was in the HRC store. So I've seen it, and I've got death threats from more than that, more people than that.
And okay, that's fine.
That's hatred. Death
How
threats.
many people were killed in the Pulse nightclub shooting because they were gay?
Oh, oh, you mean the radical Muslim that murdered them?
Radical Muslim. This is
He was a Muslim. He was a
people
Muslim
get
that hated
killed
gay people, by the way. He was
because of
not a conservative.
people
He
get
was
killed
not
because of
conservative.
anti-gay rhetoric. People
It was
get killed.
nothing.
You may have gotten threats, and I wasn't there. That's anecdotal, and I can.
No, no. I'm also an expert in radicalism. I studied it for 10 years. I know all about it, and I know that I checked this guy's background. He was a radical Muslim that hated gay people. In the Quran, it says we should. If you watch the news, they show them off buildings. I know there's gay rights actually cares about gays being murdered for being gay, and I know about it because I'm gay and I study it. There's the most the gay people in Islamic countries are the most oppressed people,
Oh,
and they're
absolutely. And you're not going to get any argument from us on
see,
that.
there's
But the
gay
point
people
is that is ideological. That was an ideological driven,
yes,
conservative, ideologically driven. And I mean that
conservative. No, it was Islamic.
absolutely, absolutely. Islam is very
False
conservative.
Night Club was Islamic. It was not. It was not nothing to do with Donald Trump conservative.
That's not Democrat or Republican. Conservative and progressive are not Democrat and Republican. That is just
Okay, but the
ideological beliefs.
political conservative and small government has nothing to do with the radical Muslim that killed them because they were gay because Islam says to kill them. Those are two different things. You don't use the word conservative with that. That makes no
I
sense.
absolutely will use the word conservative with that.
Well, you
It's
can, but I
conservative
don't.
ideology. It is a socially conservative ideology. I mean, that's
If you study the word conservative, if you look it up and you look at the word conservative, you assign it to people that are in America, at least in political terms.
it comes from France, my guy. Conservative, right and left leaning, conservative and progressive comes from after the French Revolution.
Yes. Okay. So if you want to say that opposing gay rights is conservative value, I disagree, but there are conservatives, and that was the thing. I would say, yeah. I mean, I disagree vehemently with Republican Party up until the Donald Trump era. The Republican Party was anti-gay, but also was the Democrat Party, which did not believe in gay marriage until 2014. So the Democrat Party and Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama were not supporting gay marriage either, by the way. They hitched onto that bandwagon for votes. So I don't think that's cool that the Democrat Party is like, oh, this has always been our history. No, it has not. The Democrats, the leading Democrats, were not pro-gay. They were only for gay marriage in 2014 for the first time when Hillary Clinton switched gears. But she has a history of saying she's anti-gay.
Oh, the Clintons, yeah, absolutely. The Clintons had an anti-gay history with Don't Ask, Don't Tell back in the 90s and didn't support gay marriage. And we're very openly critical of the Democratic Party. I mean, we vote Democrat because that's what most closely aligns with our values and ideologies, but Democrats are not. If we had another option, we would certainly be picking that option. I mean, it is irrefutable to say that there is people within the Republican Party who want to see you dead because you're gay, who do not believe.
I can say it's irrefutable. What's irrefutable is data. And the data does not show that there's a large number of Republicans that want to murder gay people. Now, I will tell you
the data doesn't show that there's a large number of Democrats that want to murder gay people either.
And Democrats align with radical Muslims. The Democrat far left is Queers for Palestine. Okay, all you have to say, they will murder you for being gay in Palestine, in the Palestinian territories.
And so you.
That's like chickens for KFC.
There's literally gay Palestinians fighting for liberating Palestine. So
no, I'm for the gays that want to liberate Palestine, liberate them from the Hamas. But what they're talking about is Hamas.
So they're not fighting for the liberation from Hamas. They're fighting from liberation from Israel. They're gays fighting against Israel with Hamas. There's literally gays in Hamas. So to say that you being a gay person in Palestine would make you be murdered automatically is just
well, no, it's not automatically, but according to Islamic law, it's 100%. It's not debatable. It's not debatable. I know Islam. I can read it scripture.
It's also against God's vision in the Bible too. So like
the Bible, no, nothing. The Bible says to murder people for being gay. I'm sorry, it does not. Islam does.
It just says to enslave people that you conquer. So I guess that makes it okay to like be against gay rights.
Do you know how many people radical Islam killed in 14 centuries? And I know it.
Do you know how many people Christianity killed?
I do.
I mean, do we need to go back to the beginning of Christianity and go through all of the Crusades, Catholic Church, and the persecution?
I don't think it's necessary. I feel like it's unnecessary.
I do. Okay. So just
we're getting off track. I will.
Conservatism with murdering gay people. When I'm a gay person who's only got death threats from your side is shocking. I got death threats for being a conservative gay person. I've gotten harassed. I've gotten physically shoved out of nightclubs, okay, in Fort Lauderdale because people found out I ran for Congress as a Republican. I've been to hundreds of organizations all over the United States, running for Congress and Go USA. I've met easily tens of thousands of people at CPAC and other organizations out and gay, okay? I've had maybe 5 encounters with people saying, I don't like you. I disagree with you. It happened. Okay, it's happened. I had somebody in Massachusetts that's conservative that can't stand me. But I can count on 2 hands how many people actually on the right
And
confronted me, and none of them threatened to kill me. I can count
you don't feel that this is
hundreds
part of the
of
echo
hate.
chamber you've put yourself inside of, because obviously you're on the right and the right is accepting you for peddling their
Not peddling
ideologies.
anything.
But like I get death threats from people on the right all the goddamn time. I mean, constantly.
No, I mean, I'm not. Anybody gives anybody threats is threatening me. But I've
Mhm.
gotten threatened to be murdered, and I'd be chased out. And my personal experiences. I've gotten much more hate and anger and attacks from the left than I ever got from being the right.
That's because you're trying to be a representative of an overall movement that ideologically dislikes and thinks that gay people and gay people shouldn't exist, especially in a public space, especially in teaching children that gay people exist and that gay teachers shouldn't describe their family dynamics when asked, "What'd you do for the weekend?" "Oh, I went to,"
I agree with you on that. I agree with you on that. This is the problem. The problem here is that they're conflating. The problem I identify is the LGBTQ acronym, because gay rights is very different. And I'm not saying I support trans adult rights personally, and I believe it's a freedom of speech issue, it's a freedom of expression issue. But you cross the difference when you start saying that biology and men and women and there's ignoring science, and that's
I think the Republican movement has been purposefully ignorant on the distinctions that the trans movement's been trying to make about gender and biology. I don't think there's a single trans person out there who understands the differentiation between biological sex and gender. What do I call it?
I don't understand either. I think gender and sex are this. Gender is not.
Gender is a societal construct, and sex is a biological imperative. They're completely two different things, and to say that you don't understand that, I think is disingenuous.
Well, but ultimately the word gender has not been around it's not been used the way it's been used now for forever.
There's literally been historical depictions of people being gender fluid going back to like ancient China and Egypt. So like this understanding of gender clearly transcends this era that we think it's all of a sudden this like brain virus, when it's now we just have social media and we can see that like actually there are a lot of people out there who have different ideas of what their gender should be, and they feel differently, and now they can show the world what that looks like, and hopefully not feel like they deserve to get death threats like yourself have gotten from people on the right.
Well, first of all, I would say that the big picture here is that freedom of expression, and I'm writing a book actually called a Common Sense Rights: The Case for a New Universal Bill of Rights, and we have to tackle these things as a culture and as a world if we're going to survive, I think, as a planet. And there needs to be common sense civil rights across the board. And one of the issues we look at is this issue. And if you look at freedom of so I like this. The way I believe we can help solve this problem for everybody is freedom of speech and freedom of expression is absolute. So if you want to express yourself as a female, as a male that expresses himself as a female, or female with female characteristics, or vice versa, a female that wants to express non-traditional lifestyles and non-traditional ways of approaching gender, that's your right, 100%. You need to defend it all the way. Okay, same if you're Muslim and you don't believe in radical Islam and in violent Islam, but your religion of Islam, the religion of it, that's different than the political. Islamism is not.
Can we take just one point on that freedom of expression and the Islam thing, and can we get you to say the same thing about Christianity then? I mean, there's radical Christians all over this country. The KKK is a radical Christian group, right?
No, the KKK is a Democrat group.
Oh, do not fucking start with this shit. Are you kidding me?
The KKK is a Democrat group. But anyway,
how many Klan members have you seen at a Kamala Harris rally?
I've never seen any, and I've never seen any at
I've seen them at a Trump rally.
I actually did. At CPAC, someone came in KKK and they infiltrated and they were removed. They tried to paint it. They were trying to make it look like there's KKK involvement when there's not. But I would say,
I'm assuming you deny the indisputable fact of the party switch then.
The what?
You deny that there was a party switch.
There's manipulation. There's no party. There was no actual
party switch. The Southern strategy never happened. Strom Thurmond didn't lead the Dixiecrats and then bring bring Southern Democrats into the Republican Party. All that's just make believe and myth.
No. They did bring the Democrats because there was a switch, but there wasn't the switch you're talking about. But anyway,
there wasn't the switch I'm talking about. So all the states that historically voted Republican or Democrat for their entire existence since the Democratic Party existed until 1964, and then instantly voted Republican and never stopped voting Republican since. That didn't happen. That's not the switch I'm talking about, because that's the switch I'm talking about. Those states where all the KKK is from and where the KKK thrives and exists and now votes Republican with those states because of those specific issues on the civil rights, those are still Democrats somehow.
David Duke's a supporter of Donald Trump. Like, he's not a supporter of Kamala Harris.
Okay, so, but the Democrat side has socialist, communist, Islamist. I mean, the bag of deplorables on that side is just awful.
And here's the thing. I was asking, could you say the same? Do you acknowledge that radical Christianity, there's radical Christian groups in this country that commit acts of terrorism, both physically?
There are, but this is what I'll say is there are people who call themselves. The difference is that if you say, you talk about if you talk about a reform movement, a heart, technically speaking, a radical, it depends what you mean by radical. Radical in the negative sense, yes. If you talk about
radical people who use their ideology, their religious ideology, as a justification to harm other people.
Yes, of course.
That's what I'm assuming you mean by radical Islam, right? Like
radical Islam. If you say an extremist Christian would be, according to reading the Bible, an extremist would be Mother Teresa. Okay, that would be an extremist. No, it is. That is. If you look at what the Bible says, an extremist would be Mother Teresa. If you look at what the Quran says, an extremist would be Osama bin Laden, because he's following exactly what the scripture says. So it is two very different things. People that ignore Christianity, turn the other cheek. This is Good Friday. It's Jesus' resurrection on Sunday. The Christian teachings.
First of all, a lot of what you're saying about Islam isn't true. About the Quran is just patently false. But
no, it's not.
But let's pretend that Osama bin Laden is what the Quran represents, which it doesn't. But let's pretend it. I'm not going to get into a theological argument here. That would make him orthodox, not extremist. That would make him orthodox, not extremist. Mother Teresa then would be orthodox. Fine. We're talking about extremism. We are talking about radicalism. Radicalism is not orthodox. Radicalism is extreme, right? If you are following within the confines of the structure of a theology, you are.
Yes, of course there are. There are people, but what I'm saying is they're not reading the New Testament saying turn the other cheek and doing. There's no. They call themselves Christians, but they're not. There's nothing Christian about it. Okay.
I mean, they blow up abortion clinics because they feel that that's what God wants them to do. That's extremism based on what their misinterpretation of the Bible says.
Their misinterpretation, yes, and that's extreme. But
that's misinterpretation of Islam and the Quran, which leads to radical Islam and Islamic terrorists.
70% of the writings in Islam are violent.
No, they're not. That's just patently false.
Most of the Quran is basically just like the rephrasing of the New Testament and the Old Testament. Like it's a reinterpretation of previous generations.
To kill, to convert. So anyway, I don't go on about. I can read the book on that. But if you read the Sirah and you read if you read Sharia law, a lot of it is peaceful. A lot of the Sharia law, but there's elements of it that are very clear that you're to kill infidels. I mean, it says it's not debatable.
And there's elements of that in the Bible, throughout the Bible. And the Bible is incredibly violent. Like
I think we should just forget about the Bible, Quran.
This is a rabbit hole that will take forever.
Yeah, I guess let's talk about maybe some of the issues that you ran on in 2020 that I wanted to kind of get your take on. So one of the big things that you said that you wanted a practical, common sense, limited government. And I just wanted to see if you could kind of give a short paragraph on kind of what that means to you.
I mean, the government by itself, as my great uncle Thomas Jefferson would say, most governments eventually turn tyrannical. The reason why we created the three branches of governments and the Constitution is to limit government. That's the whole purpose. The reason why America is successful is because we have limited government, not because we have this ever-growing government. So right now we've got, everybody knows taxes go up and costs go up and everything. The government's bloated, and there's too much. The founding fathers, and I agree with our founding fathers, the government's is supposed to not guarantee happiness, not guarantee wealth. It's supposed to make us free men and women to live our lives with the least amount of government intrusion as possible. Obviously, we have to have civil society. Obviously, we need to have police and law and order. But we don't need to have intrusive government. And government's gone too big and too far. And I believe in less government. So, there's so many regulations. I mean, people probably don't know that when you elect an official, because if I was elected, I would have been in Congress. What the elected officials do, I think, is maybe 5% of the laws you see. The vast majority of them are unelected bureaucrats. That there's a law that gets passed, but all of the mechanisms and all the codes of the law are put in by these bureaucrats that are just nonstop making more and more rules and regulations that limit freedom.
Except it is Congress's job to maintain and regulate those agencies. And if they feel that those agencies overstep their bounds, it's their responsibility to put them in check, in which both parties have been in power within the House and Senate over the last 20 years, which I'm sure many of these regulations that you feel overstep have been written. So I don't really understand why, I guess when you say there's three, forms of government to limit government, I would disagree and say they were created to create a balance of power within that government, not to ensure that it remains limited in its scope. And then I would also like to hear what you have to say when you hear that we spend less per GDP as a country than basically any other first world country. So how much more limited can our government possibly get when we already spend less per capita than any other first world country?
Well, first of all, we spend the highest amount for defense, I believe.
That wasn't my statistic. I'd say GDP per capita, we spend less as a government than any other first world government by a good margin.
Okay, but are you taking into account state governments?
I think it's federal spending.
Okay, so that we have 50 states here, and a lot of the states do. Most countries don't have our state system. So when you look at those numbers, you're not counting state government.
A lot of countries do have, not in the same way that we believe it, but they still fund their states in kind of a same way. Germany has also funds their country. They have different states within their own.
Okay, but the difference is because we have a representative government. The states, where the United States.
Germany also has a representative government.
Most of the first world has a representative government. We're not that special.
States. It's 50 states that are the United States, right? So there's a lot more power, a lot more happening with our states that are separate than other countries on comparatively.
And also, I don't understand, because if we're talking about limited on the federal level, what the fuck does state spending have to do with any of that in the first place? Like, that's a separate topic.
Well, no, because you're talking about, first of all, you're talking about overall spending, but a lot of the spending that happens in America happens in the state level. So if you add
the federal part of
it. But also, they are socialistic. They have high spending, and they have more socialistic type of programs for healthcare and other things.
Social safety nets.
Social safety nets, but they also have, if you look at countries that have these big, huge social safety nets, you look at the number of companies that started in these countries versus America. We have many, many more patents, many, many more companies start because we have more incentives.
We have many, many more people.
No, but proportionally, if you look at the shocking number of patents in America, total, but also per capita, and the number of companies that started, how many companies can you name out of Norway or something? Granted, they're smaller countries.
IKEA, or was that Sweden?
That's also kind of like a recency bias. Like, you see U.S. countries living in the United States, and you don't see companies being created in Germany.
No,
and
I'm
France.
just saying the number of companies. No, there's statistics showing the number of companies that started in America that have. There's a lot more entrepreneurism in America. It's a different society, and the point is, we're not a socialist country. We have more
in terms of patents per capita, Switzerland consistently ranks the highest with 1.26 patents per capita.
What does?
Switzerland.
Well, Switzerland, well, a lot of companies, Switzerland's a little bit different because a lot of people start.
I mean, you just said there's statistics that say that America holds the most patents per capita, and then I just looked that up, and that's actually false. Like, I mean, I just
where does the United States fall? Was it a list? It was looking like the one that said the most, and it was Switzerland. I guess that doesn't even really. I think that I don't understand how that relates to a limited government. And
yeah.
Okay, well, I own properties, and
China also supersedes
I get mail every day. We have to do assessments. I've got to get inspections. I've got to go and the permit process. How many? By the way, the left is running California. Okay, how many permits have been issued in left-wing California, progressive California, since those fires? How many? How many buildings have got permits? How many building permits have been issued since the fires? It's been a couple months, few months. How many issues? How many do you think have been issued?
I don't know, but that's a local state issue.
Yeah, that's again.
No. The point is this: it's so inefficient in California, run by very far left progressives. And granted, I'm not saying it's only one side. I'm sure there's red states run by, that are also one red state, and it gets corrupt when one party runs a state forever.
I mean, but Texas' power grid is a great example of how not regulating anything is a fucking disaster too.
Not regulating anything. There's too many regulations. Here's the regulatory state. They can't figure out how to get permits to rebuild California because there's so much red tape. My point is, there's a lot of red tape. There's so many regulations, and the cost. I mean, if you look at how much money is spent at the government and how much waste there is, and you might not like what you see from Doge, but as far as I've seen, no one's been able to contradict the numbers that have come out.
Literally everything's been contradicted.
There's been a huge amount of numbers that have been contradicted. I don't know if you've seen or Googled them.
50 billion in condoms to Gaza. Like, I mean,
or
like
just
it's so
misreading.
ridiculous. Like, you don't even need to fact check it.
Yeah, none of those. There were not condoms that were sent to Palestine. Right. Like that never happened.
So like,
well, but a lot of it.
No, a lot of it was not. You can't see. We can give you specific examples of stuff that has been refuted, but they have not been able to support, and they have walked back a bunch of claims that they came out with. They have walked them back. They've deleted them off your little website that is claim, the receipts website, and all the receipts then disappear after they get debunked. It repeatedly. They claimed they were going to save $1 trillion, and they're 900 billion short of that, and not getting any better. They're also costing more money than they're saving. So like none of it.
They're not costing more money than they're saving.
They absolutely are.
They're not costing hundreds of billions. I've seen the numbers, and you can cherry pick some things out of that, but the numbers going from USAID all around the world were it's just so much waste, and it's not.
Oh my God, are you really going to say USAID is wasteful? Do you know how much? Do you know how much money in defense spending USAID has saved the United States?
Where did you get that number from? What number are you talking about?
It's for every dollar spent in USAID, I think it's $2 or $6. I'll have to look it up here.
They also only are 0.1% or less. They're less than 1% of our total spending. So I don't understand how that's going to put us back into a non-deficit spending, phase of our government.
That's only one division. That's one organization, USAID.
No, the whole spending of U.S. foreign aid is 1% of our total spending as the federal government.
Yeah, but 1% of the $6 trillion you spent for the federal government is still a lot of money, is it not?
I mean, not to a $21 trillion budget. You're saving what, 200 billion?
Okay, so there's cities that run off $200 billion. It's entire cities. My point is this the leftist way of thinking that $200 billion is nothing?
No, I'm saying if they had a plan to say hey, this is the deficit, and these are the things we want to cut in order to balance the budget, then let's see that. But just saying we're going to cut 1% here and 1% there, that doesn't sound like a strong business plan to me.
Well, it is, because there's the government's run by a bunch of bureaucrats that never ran businesses before.
Not Trump's cabinet. His cabinet has more billionaires than any other presidential cabinet in history.
which is great because they know how to make money. Capitalists.
They know how to exploit. Anyways, as far as fighting corruption, you say you fighting rampant government corruption. What would you say about corporates exploitation and corporate corruption and the things that the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau has been doing for the past couple of decades to bring back tens of millions, billions of dollars back to consumers?
I don't know. Okay, I don't know. We didn't study that specific, so I don't have the information on the consumer. But I know Elizabeth Warren's involved. I'm against it. But anyway, the point is, there is fraud in government. There are problems. I mean, the biggest threat is corporate America. I'm not going to diss corporate America because we're a capitalist country, but there are corporations that commit fraud. And look at right now. We have Pfizer. We have all of those companies that we're going after. That were pushing the vaccines, right? So there's a lot of and a lot of these major corporations. By the way, I understand that the vast majority of not the vast majority. I think it's something like 70 or 75% of the corporate boards are Democrats. So it's not like this big evil Republicans running everything. Is actually the opposite. I'm concerned about government colluding with corporations, colluding with the media. That's the problem.
So would you be for a publicly financed election?
I'm sorry?
Would you be for a publicly financed election?
I'm conflicted on that. But overall, there needs to be.
That's how you get corporate funding out of our elections without getting rid of Citizens United.
Okay. So I want to get into the OppScore in a minute next. But
us too.
For this issue, there needs to be something that has to happen. I don't believe we should have all this corporate funding because they can raise unlimited money, and now they're getting bought and paid for by corporations. The problem is if it's the government funding it, the government has a lot of control then in terms of who can be elected, and it's also that's concerning because now the government, which I most people don't really fully trust their government. The government is going to be picking who's going to be in the government. And that's very corrupt. And so the problem with public financing is now you have the other problem of picking the government. I know in Europe, though, there's a lot of work there's a lot of restrictions when it comes to running for office, for example, in Europe. And the government funds things, but also the government can pick and choose who can run. They're doing that right now all over the place in Europe. So
they don't have
a specific example, or
they also don't run off candidates in Europe. Most of their parties run, and then they provide candidates after they've received some sort of percentage. So that's not really the same thing, and people wouldn't really understand that when you say it that way.
And I'm also I feel like it's very easy, as in you get X amount of money, period. Every candidate that passes a certain threshold or bar that gets on a general ballot just gets X amount of money to run their campaign how they see fit, and that's that. I mean, there's no picking and choosing in a system that would be that straightforward.
No, it's just but getting to the point. There's nuances to getting to the point, and then who gets to run. I can't answer that question point blank, but I do know that we have to restrict corporate.
You are in favor of getting money out of politics, like getting corporate money. You would be in favor of overturning Citizens United, getting rid of that.
We have to keep things free and fair. And I used to be a fan of Citizens United, but now with seeing everything that's been happening with that, I'm more against it. Yeah. I think more and more people are against that.
There's some common ground there. I do think that is one of the common sense things we could all agree on. I think that everybody, you either want money out of politics or you're benefiting from money in politics. There's no other side of that coin, So I appreciate that. But yeah, we can move on. I think to your OppScore.
So the OppScore is. This is the position of it. The cumulative effect is imagine you have a GPA. This is an example, like you go to college, you're going to have 2 or 3 courses you love, and that's what you're going to think about. That's what you love, this course, that course, the history course, or whatever you took. That's what you think about that. But actually, your GPA isn't based upon your favorite courses. It's based upon all the courses put together, because to get your degree, you need to be proficient at a number of things, not just the things you love to do. When it comes to politics, people vote on the things that they're passionate about. So if they're abortion, it might be the borders, it might be gun rights, it might be education. And typically that's what drives people. And then one party or another hitches them, and they pull them on that train, and they say, okay, now you're going to vote. Now you have to vote on our side because we got you on this one issue. that's stupid, because when you vote, when you buy a product, you might want a car, a red car that's an SUV, and that has, but you know what? You care about the safety features, you care about the economy of the car, you care about how many seats it has, you care about the sound system. You're going to look at all those things before you buy it, right? Wouldn't you? Wouldn't you going to look? Or
Yep.
you're going to buy a $50,000 car and only care about one issue?
Mm-hmm. No,
It's
absolutely. I agree.
okay.
So like
we railed against one issue voters specifically on the left this time around over like just constantly. So we're with you.
Yes, so one issue voters are a big problem. And
Mhm.
the reality is, if you're looking at products, if you're buying a bicycle or a car, or even go to a movie, people they'll spend 20 minutes looking at reviews before they let go of 20 bucks, right? Because they want to see what the movie's about. They're going to see the reviews. So when I ran for Congress, my instinct was, people agree with me on the issues. On average, when I add up the issues mathematically, this is my MIT background, I'm like a math guy. I'm like, then why do you lose? Because in the consumer world where I came from, a marketing, I started a screen printing company. I've run screen printing and T-shirts and surfing and marketing. I've done all these businesses, and I'm like, no business. Just goes against everything I've experienced in the business world. It's the opposite. The dumb idiot gets elected that no one likes on the issues, but the guy that's giving everything they want mostly doesn't get in. So I said, where is like the Rotten Tomatoes or Yelp, or where's the resource to say, forget about the red or the blue. I just want to go down issue by issue, where they stand, so I can match up. And it didn't exist. So we came up with the opportunity score, because opportunity is America, land of opportunity. We wanted something that didn't sound and feel like it was right or left. So we figured opportunity is more apple pie than that. Opportunity, right? Land of opportunity. So we called it the opportunity score, and then we said, okay, let's take out the bias. What are the top issues? So we looked at Pew Research and Rasmussen and all these polls that have reputable polls, and what are the top issues people care about? So, okay, down the line, defense, military, borders, police, First Amendment, Second Amendment. We didn't look at every constitutional issue. People said, what about the Constitution? I said, we're looking at the biggies: the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, the privacy rights, the Fourth Amendment, the 10th Amendment. Those are the key elements, because we can't cover everything. Otherwise, it becomes a wonky, long, confusing thing.
So it's
that's what we took in. So we looked at all the issues upon the top issues. So we're not biased in terms of the issues we picked. We've looked at issues that people care about.
So I guess I appreciate that that's sort of where you're coming from, and that's sort of where your goal, where you wanted to kind of be. Jordan and I took the test.
Are you saying that this is then a apolitical or non-biased test then?
No, it's very biased. It's biased. It's biased in the sense of the Constitution and the will of the people. We look at the measuring, that the one thing that we do is we help the opportunity source. We define what opportunity is.
How can you as a person write something that is biased for the will of the people? Shouldn't the will of the people taking your test ultimately show what that bias would be in their results?
Yeah, but what I mean bias, there's not bias built in. What I'm saying, it's bias. It's
okay.
The definition.
So you're saying that there's no bias built into this test?
Yeah, I mean the so-called bias built in. I'll explain what the bias is in a moment. The bias is the Constitution. So when we have a scoring system, the point is, if you get a score that's, say, negative, we had to give it a positive thing. We wanted to have a compass. So yes, we said it was negative if you're against the will of the people or against the Constitution, the Constitution as written and adjudicated by the Supreme Court. That's especially important for the Second Amendment, is that it's the Constitution as written and as adjudicated over history according to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court has adjudicated the Second Amendment, the First Amendment, things like that. So that's how we get back to people that are like fundamentalist conservatives that say, oh, the Constitution says this, and I'm a First Amendment all the way, and no exceptions. And the same with the Second Amendment. We say, well, it's as adjudicated. So that's the thread that's how we do that. And then we assign pro opportunity. The bias is, what do we call opportunity? Because we're the advocate. It's opportunity it's our thing. We created it. So we define opportunity to be more opportunity if the majority of people in the Constitution say, yeah, you're in line with them. And anti-opportunity if you're against the will of the people or the Constitution. Now, it's your right as an American to say, I'm against the Constitution on this issue. I don't believe in the Second Amendment. I'm against it. or I'm against the will of the people. If 80% of people want voter ID, I don't want voter ID. I think it's wrong or it's racist or whatever.
And so you guys determined
sign that anti-opportunity because it's against statistically the will of the people or the constitutions. That's where I say the bias is in the sense of pro or anti-opportunity. But there's no other bias that we've seen built into it. We didn't build any other bias into it.
Cool. Yeah.
So where did you find like this sort of like the information as to like most Americans or majority of Americans are 85%? Like where like are you going off like Pew Research or like what's sort of
citation for it? Yeah.
Are you using polls only, or is there like studies at all involved with that?
No, we just looked at the top issues. The beauty of looking at the top issues is that there's data, because all the polling companies, because politicians want to get elected, so they do polls all the time because they got to see where they got to keep on doing the litmus test to see where the people stand to get elected. So there's a huge industry and a lot of money being put into polls. So we look at and we cite the poll. So the poll might be from a year ago. I mean, sometimes polls will change and we have to keep on top of it between election cycles. But on average, the beauty of it is the majority of issues are not like 49-51. Almost all the issues are way more. Most of the issues, with rare exceptions, most of the issues are 70, 80, even 90% agreement. And that's sort of the Thomas Jefferson common sense, the book Common Sense that started our revolution. Common sense. So most issues typically are on that are not close. So we just cite, okay, here's the issue with the majority of people. By the way, sometimes we have to thread a careful needle. So, for example, the majority of people are strongly for the Second Amendment. There's a good majority, but there's also the same number want common sense constitutional good gun reforms. So typically Democrats and Republicans have the same similar scores, because you lose a point if you're against the Second Amendment, you lose a point if you're against common sense gun reform. And if you're an extreme on either side, you're going to lose a point, gain a point. So we often have to take questions and divide them into two because they're too complex to make one question for, like the Second Amendment.
Yeah.
So we have data showing those things. So we put the data in the scoring system and we reference it, saying the majority of people are for the Second Amendment, but also the majority of people don't want criminals and people. They want background checks. They don't want violent criminals having guns. They don't want mentally ill people having guns. So the conservatives don't like that, and they very often don't want any gun control. But then the people on the left will more often say they don't want. They're more against the Second Amendment. But on average, most people agree that, for example, the majority of Americans want the Second Amendment, but they want common sense.
Sure, yeah, we get it. So when we start off, can I ask why we've got to put our zip code, party registration or affiliation, and party you vote for in before you even start the test?
Because the point of the test of the OppScore challenge was to match you up with the candidates you're going to be voting for in the election. Right now, the current OppScore challenge is built for the 2024 election. We're not going to go and deal with the next one until 2026. So the system only works if you put your zip code in, so you can know, so that you can do the match.
Okay.
That's why it does that.
All right.
So,
are you ready to start getting into questions, Taylor, or did you have anything else on this?
No, I feel like we can cover the points that I was thinking of when we go through the individual questions. So we put out, what do we have here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
I have a bunch that I didn't put in here that I just got screenshots of that I was just gonna kind of go off the fly. Yeah, so the first one that I kind of flagged here to ask about was the fourth question. I believe the government has the right to monitor citizens' purchases and online activities and to enforce medical mandates as it deems necessary for public safety. Now, when we're talking about nuances and stuff, that's 2, possibly 3 different questions you shoved into one single question right there. I have varying levels of agreement with this question per sentence, per line, and that I mean, how is somebody supposed to answer that when there's at least 2 different answers?
So this is it. So first of all, we wanted to keep it efficient. We didn't want to make it a one. If we asked every single question one at a time, it would be too many questions. That was number 1. Number 2, the flavor of this question is the Fourth Amendment, but we wanted to make sure we had something about medical freedom in that too, because even though that's not technically a Fourth Amendment question, there is a privacy rights issues with the medical freedom. So it would have been nicer to have that as 2 questions, but the way we do it is said, okay, what if you agree with one part of the question or disagree with the other? Okay. You would then generally say a mix, so a 0 or a mix. Now, if we had 2 questions and you had 2 questions and you got a point for each one, supposing you were for privacy rights, you would get 2 points. If we made it to one question that had worth 2 points, if you really strongly agree with, you get 2 points.
But
if you disagree with, so in the way the math,
because here's the thing is obviously I don't think I don't think you're going to find anybody who's going to agree with the government monitoring citizens' purchases and online activities. Like everybody's going to disagree with that. So you put this in here, and
Yep.
then you see medical mandates, which is obviously COVID or masks or whatever you're getting at there, and a lot of people have well, first of all, a medical mandate has been a broadly misused term throughout like COVID. I mean, there was a lot of things where it's like you have to have a vaccine to go to work, and that was an employer's decision, and people were complaining about medical mandates and stuff. So again, a very broad, vague question, and it's so I'm not going to say that I disagree with medical mandates in a sense that if there's something that is going to save people's lives and that's something that we need to do as a society, sure, I may agree at least somewhat with some sort of government oversight to do that. But I strongly disagree with governments having the right to monitor citizens. And so, like, the fact that you put those two together, I cannot answer that question because I'm
well, you can
almost
answer it because you can answer it because the answer is it's clear. It's you strongly disagree, you strongly agree, or it's a mix to 0. So you just put a 0. So you'd say I agree.
But then it just negates the whole point of the question. The question's useless. It's meaningless at that
No,
point.
it's not, because what happens is the reason why we're doing this is instructive, because when you look at your politicians, okay, they did vote. I mean, the Patriot Act, which by the way was started by, I believe, by Bush, was Republicans, and both parties have been voting for the Patriot Act. We do this also to illustrate that the Patriot Act actually gives the government the ability to monitor a lot of this private.
Yeah, and everybody hates the Patriot Act. I mean, like, but again,
okay, my point is though,
now medical mandates not the same thing.
Okay, it probably should be 2 questions. We decided to make it 1 because it was sort of in the middle of it. We already had the 1 question, but then we were like, oh, where's the medical question? So we kind of squeezed it in because the program. The point is, it's if you agree with one, you disagree with the other, it gives 0. That's the reason that's how we did it. And you'd say most people will not be for that privacy issues, but yet your representatives are voting against your privacy because they're voting for, many of them, the majority of them are voting for the Patriot Act renewals.
Yeah.
Which,
no, I mean, that's
be aware of, and everybody
fine.
should
That's
be
an irrefutable fact that a Patriot Act has been incredibly unpopular, and been bipartisanly supported by our elected officials. But I
yes, and we want
I just don't, in the context of the question,
Yep.
it didn't make sense to me. It still doesn't.
Well, that's what. But again, the reason why we did it, sometimes we put 2 questions in one, and or we don't like doing it, but there are occasions where that happened because of the way we built the system, and we didn't want it to run on to 100 questions.
Sure.
But the big flavor is: do you believe in government surveillance and control of your privacy or not? That's the big question. And if you're for losing your privacy to the government, whether it's medical mandates or or privacy rights of your purchases. That's the flavor of that Fourth Amendment style question. And most people are going to disagree with that, are going to disagree with it. But they'll find out when they look at the OppScore that most of the time their politicians are voting against them. And that's the point of the system partly is there's so many times this happens that your elected officials are working against you.
Howdy, guys. This is Taylor here. We are wrapping up the podcast. We're splitting this up into 2 episodes. This first half was interesting. But the second half really kind of it amps up a little bit, and we really kind of we get into sort of the more, I don't want to say like MAGA rhetoric, but some of the same talking points. And Jordan and I really kind of we tackle those. We spend a lot of time and a lot of effort trying to really drill down into these talking points and, I mean, sort of break them down and show how they're just really, really false narratives and just have no place. So apologies for kind of the rough editing here. We didn't really have the opportunity to do some nice, clean intros and exits to split this episode up. But hope you enjoyed the first half, and hope you'll tune in next week to watch or listen in on a somewhat heated debate, I would say. So thanks for tuning in.